distinguished panelists, colleagues from the private sector, industry leaders, delegates from the academic community, representatives from the civil society and non-governmental organizations, fellow officials and development partners, a pleasant good morning to all. On behalf of the Philippine government, I wish to convey our gratitude to the International Society for Energy Transition Studies for organizing this inaugural international conference, as well as the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific for co-organizing this event. The Asia-Pacific region accounts for more than half of the global greenhouse gas emissions. This is mainly due to how we produce and consume energy. Consequently, our climate is rapidly changing and calling for urgent action. In the Philippines, electricity generation comprises 56.53% of the country's greenhouse gas emissions, with coal accounting for 56.57% of the country's total emissions by fuel type. This is attributed to the 52% share of coal in electricity generation and 12 gigawatts of installed capacity as of 2022. But beyond the pressures of escalating climate change, the energy sector is tasked to address sustainability concerns outlined under the UN's Sustainable Development Goals 7 and 13, which are centered around universal access to affordable and clean energy, increased efficiency, a fast transition to renewable energy, and climate action. Every one of us in this forum is aware that our countries for a decade have been calling for accelerated action to achieve these two SDGs. Allow me to briefly touch on how the Philippines is moving forward in its energy transition program, which is anchored on a 4-point strategy towards attaining a clean energy future. These are to accelerate the deployment of renewable projects with special focus on offshore wind, to meet our target of at least 35% renewable energy in electricity generation by 2030 and 50% by 2040. 2. Develop a green and smart transmission grid to accommodate and manage the additional renewable energy capacity expected to come online from 2024 to 2040. Third, expand the necessary port infrastructure to support offshore wind and other marine-based energy resource development projects. And fourth, provide an avenue for voluntary decommissioning or repurposing of existing coal-fired power plants. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, navigating energy transition roadmaps and aligning them with decarbonization efforts in SDG 7 and 13 targets will entail costs with uneven benefits across peoples, regions, and countries. With many countries facing high debt, rising interest rates, and weaker growth prospects, reliance on public expenditure will be an unsustainable path. For instance, in the Philippines, public expenditure will rely on the continued sovereign borrowing due to the country's tight fiscal space. According to an UNCTAD report, achieving the energy transition is projected to cost about 5.8 trillion annually from 2023 to 2030 for the 48 developing countries studied, comprising of 19 low and lower middle income and 29 upper middle and high income bracket countries. This financial burden will account for 19% of their collective GDP, with the least developed countries carrying the heaviest burden, where energy transition will account for 46% of their GDP. This also means per person, the annual cost comes to $1,271 to achieve goals such as providing universal access to electricity and improving access to clean energy. How do we address How do we address the fiscal challenges in transitioning to clean energy without sacrificing our nation's coffers? Countries with more financial resources are encouraged to provide financial assistance through climate finance to the less endowed and more vulnerable countries. This will aid those countries to escape the trap of fossil fuel dependency and expensive electricity hindered by the high upfront cost of clean energy. Another critical challenge that I have mentioned is the development of energy transmission in the region. The present-day grid is not suitable for the purpose of the envisioned future. This calls for the expansion and modernization of the electric power transmission grids to accommodate and optimize the influx of clean energy that will be generated by virtue of the energy transition. Developing countries such as the Philippines also experience impediments in the right skilling and upskilling of workers in the energy sector. The workforce needs to acquire new skills for the energy transition, to optimize their skills and proficiencies in green jobs. This is just a glimpse of the challenges confronting the developing countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Developing countries face different obstacles that require different sets of solutions according to their respective national circumstances, capabilities, and priorities. With the combined expertise that cuts across fields and countries in this conference, I am confident that the exchanges of views will be inclusive and that no nation will be left behind. For my fellow policymakers in the public sector, I urge you to seize this invaluable opportunity to listen closely to the views of the various stakeholders from this conference. We have a lot of work to do. The right people are in this forum, public and private sector, multilateral agencies, academia, and industry leaders. We hope this conference will grow and be a collaborative platform to practical approaches and equal access to financing to accelerate our green energy transition. Thank you and have a pleasant and productive day ahead.